Hey, everybody, welcome to the Strike Up the Band podcast. My name is Mike Miller, and today I have a distinct pleasure of having Mark Mullins on the show. Mark is a trombonist and composer and arranger and band leader from the New Orleans area. He is one of the founders of the band Bonerama, which you may or may not have heard of, but if you hadn't heard of it by now, you will definitely have heard of it by the end of this show. Uh, he's played with the Harry Connick Band, and he's played with just all kinds of rock and blues and funk bands for many years. So, Mark, thanks so much for taking time to be with me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing good, doing great. I always ask everybody that's on if you can just tell me a little bit about your background and where you're from and how you got started in music.
Yep. Well, I grew up in the New Orleans area, out in the suburbs. I was born in New Jersey, actually, but I was 4 years old when we moved down to New Orleans. And my older brothers played music in the school band. And so I'm like, I want to do that too. And so they told me what instrument to play. They said, man, if I wanted to play saxophone, but the orthodontist said that's a bad idea because I was getting braces and stuff. So they said trombone, and they said you'll be first chair right away because nobody's playing the trombone back in that day. And they were right. I was the only trombone player, and lonely bone player, like 13 trumpets and 20 snare drums and one trombone. So, but as I got older, I realized New Orleans is definitely a trombone town, and grew up playing in different bands around town, cover bands, kind of learned how to arrange horns for music that doesn't sometimes have horns. I was in a band called Rum Boogie with Dave Ferrato and Kirk Steen. This is back in high school, at the very end of high school. And they would do, it was like a psychedelic cover band. We'd do Jimi Hendrix and Deep Purple and all sorts of stuff. And they say, here, arrange the horns for this. There's no horns. And sometimes Dave would sing something to me, or sometimes I would just make stuff up on my own. But I learned a lot about how to role play with the horn section and how to try to fit in, and I'm still learning today. But it's that's one thing I love to do these days is arrange for horns in different settings, usually rock or pop settings. But, like played in that band, played in a bunch of different bands, went to Loyola University. So I was getting the music education of the classroom, if you will, or in the ensembles on campus. And then at night I'd be gigging, doing different gigs around town, either in the French Quarter or not long after I started college, I met George Porter Jr., who was the bass player from the Meters, a big, hugely influential funk band that came out of New Orleans in the late 60s and 70s. And George had a solo band with horns. So I started playing with him, and that was a whole nother education, getting to interact with George and learning about true New Orleans funk music and its origins and what it could do and how crowds reacted off of this stuff. It was just a whole great experience, met a lot of interesting people along the way through all those bands, and learned a lot about what to do and what not to do while watching all these people that were older than me. So it was a really great experience, being able to grow up in a city so cultural and with the rich cultural heritage of New Orleans, all these different influences coming together in one big pot of gumbo, if you will, to make all this different kind of music. And that's basically the start of it. And I'm still doing it nowadays. I'm 55 years old, still playing music, and just honored to be able to play music in a city from like New Orleans.
So, have you lived there your whole life then?
Yeah, since I was 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
since I was 4, been here the whole time. And I thought I was going to go to New York. After Loyola, I was going to go to graduate school at Manhattan School of Music with my buddy John Coward and myself. John Coward's a tremendously talented piano player, and he's got a flourishing solo career out nowadays. And he's been playing with Brian Blade and the Fellowship for years. Anyway, we were buddies at Loyola, and we were going to go to Manhattan School of Music together after we graduated. And literally on graduation day is when I got a call from Harry Connick Jr., his manager, about being in the band. And basically I auditioned over the phone for it. It was pretty much word of mouth, but at that moment everything changed because I got into his band that he was putting together. And this is like 1990 when Harry was really just breaking big time. And I was like, man, what a great opportunity. I was a fan. I loved what was happening with his career. And now I get a chance to be in the orchestra and be in the big band. So that was it. No New York for me. I stayed based out of New Orleans and traveled with Harry for basically 16 years.
Wow.
And during that time, I had a couple of bands developed. I had a rock band called Mulebone that I fronted with the trombone and sang, and just one trombone though up front, playing like original rock music that my buddy John Grow and I put together. And so we did that when I was not away with Harry. And then shortly after that, Bonerama was born in 1998, and we've been playing for 25 years, and we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. So, and we're still going. The lineup's changed along the way. The people come and go, but the essential ingredients of Bonerama still remain, and that's my main thing that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic band. Maybe before we get into that too much, tell us a little more about playing with Harry Connick. He's obviously one of the most recognized and well-known musicians in the country. That had to be quite a thrill to be on the stage with him for that long.
It sure was. It was like I was about to go to graduate school at Manhattan School of Music, right? But like then this shows up, and it's like a whole nother set of education that you can't really get anywhere. You're on the road with a big band, and it was like in some ways it was like a pop act because we were playing to large crowds, but musically it was a straight ahead big band. If you listen to Blue Light, Red Light and the records we did early on.
I have that CD. That is fantastic CD. Yeah.
And Harry initially, like for the Harry Met Sally stuff and the We Are in Love stuff, he wasn't arranging everything, but for that Blue Light, Red Light, that's when he started really hands-on, 100% arranging everything, writing all the music, writing the lyrics. And to see how fast he developed as a songwriter, arranger, was pretty mind-blowing because he's like my age. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like dealing on such an incredibly high level. Yet while still being an incredible personality on stage. And he had all this stuff going on for him. Musically was not slacking at all. He was playing world-class jazz, world-class piano, vocals were killer. And he kept us to that standard as well. And so a lot of us, we had to grow up pretty quick. I was probably 22, 23 years old when I started with him. Most of us were that young. A lot of us were. And
was the band mostly from the New Orleans area, or
it was? Yeah, it's a good question. He wanted a mix of New Orleans guys and some New York guys, and that's essentially what it was. About half of us, I think, were from New Orleans at that time, and because he wanted that New Orleans sound, but he had a New York connection as well, and I think that was a brilliant way to go. But learned a lot, and just to see how he would deal musically while at the same time making people smile and making people happy every single night in front of thousands of people, like keeping them on the edge of their seat for 2.5 hours. It was a true lesson, and I don't get to play with him much anymore because I'm doing Bonerama full time. I left in 2006, but every once in a while I'll get a call. Hey, can you fill in? Dion can't make it or something like that. I'm like, yeah, come out there. And it's just great to see him again and great to still watch him on stage from my seat on the stage, because it's quite a learning experience, and he's something else. Looks like a kitty cat just walked.
That was my cat just crossed in front of the camera there. He was probably ready for his 14th meal of the day. So, yeah, I mean, it's you can't be human and not like Harry Connick's music. I mean, it's just so much fun to listen to.
Yeah, we got to do a lot of great stuff. I mean, we traveled all around the world and stayed in great hotels, and they treated us nice. He would always hang out with the band. He wanted to be one of the guys. That's just how he is. He's just down home. And we got to do some high level TV stuff, and we did a lot of TV stuff, and that was very exciting, very, very exciting. And then recording, we'd record in New York a lot. And then there were times where we recorded at Capitol in Hollywood, on the West Coast a lot. And to be in that famous room, all the history of Capitol Studios, all the people that have recorded in there and been in there, it was just an awesome experience to be able to do that. And I treasure it all. I really do.
And before we started recording, Mark and I were talking. There was a funny story when Mark was with the Harry Connick Band, and he was here in my hometown in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And you want to tell that story? You want me to tell it?
Well, I can't remember how it started. I just remember it centered around Krispy Kreme donuts, and before you know it, they're getting flown through the air at the crowd, I believe, right?
Yeah, the auditorium here in town is right next door to a Krispy Kreme donut shop, and somehow in the middle of the show, Harry called for somebody to go get some donuts, and they brought the donuts on stage. And I just remember him saying, one of these guys in the band used to play baseball, and we'll see if we can get a donut in the balcony. And it was, I don't know if he actually ever made it to the balcony or not, because that's a pretty good throw.
I can't even remember who it was, but I remember that happening. But the thing is, we would do 5 or 6 shows a week in different cities, and something like this would happen on his shows every night. Like, it was almost, and it was never scripted or calculated. He would just make up this funny stuff to do. And it really, in the moment on stage, it was quite hilarious. All these different things. We played, one time he called us up between songs, he's just bantering with the crowd, just talking. And he's like, come on, guys, Mullins, Klein, Lucian, come on, we're going to play some football. And we're like, what is this? We didn't talk about this. And we start playing like a mock football game on the stage. Oh gosh, we had a Lou Rawls singing contest once, which I lost to Craig Klein. He won that one. But every night it would be something just cracking us up, and the crowd is thinking it's scripted every night, but it wasn't. And he was just funny. He was always off, like, wanted to come up with something kind of cool to keep the crowd on the edge of their seats, just wondering, well, what's this guy going to do next? And it was pretty interesting to see, but every night there'd be something.
Okay. So yeah, you're talking about starting Bonerama, and obviously that's what you're really known for now. Tell us about how that got started.
Well, Craig Klein and I were in Harry's band. This is probably 97 or so, 97. And Craig went out and saw this Latin band playing with all these trombones fronting the band. He's like, man, we should try to do something like this in New Orleans. And he talked to me about it when we got home. He's like, we should make a band that, features the trombone, because this is 1998. You didn't have Trombone Shorty being as famous as he was known around New Orleans, but he was very, very young. So the trombone was kind of, in our opinion, it just needed to be brought to the front a little bit more. And so that's just what we did with Bonerama. We didn't set any rules on what kind of music it could be. In fact, that was almost intentional to say, we're going to front this band with trombones and play anything from funk, New Orleans funk music, to maybe rock music, to original music too, which we wanted to do, and maybe some jazz. These are just all styles of music that collectively we all liked and were influenced by. Different styles for different guys in the band, which made it pretty cool. But I like the rock stuff. I had Mulebone going before this, and so I'm just a big fan of rock music. And I started bringing in some covers like Frankenstein and Whipping Post, and because I like to arrange, I'd arrange those for specifically for Bonerama, and people just seem to get a kick out of hearing those songs through the voice of a trombone or multiple trombones. But we did have a lot of original music too, really good songwriters in the band, and we love New Orleans funk music, and we just mix all that up, and it becomes a Bonerama party. And Bonerama is named after the trombone for people that hear the name and they're
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask that. How'd you go? Because if you the name has certain comedic qualities to it.
Oh yeah, we weren't exactly unaware of that when we named it. We get a lot of people shaking their head. It's the trombone. We're bone players. Anyone that plays trombone, we're bone players. We play the bone. So Jimmy Robinson, my friend from Woodenhead down here in New Orleans, he had a band of multiple guitars called Twangorama. And my wife's like, Jimmy, can they call the band Bonerama? He's like, yeah. And so we did, and we stuck with it. It actually was called the Bonerama Trombone Group at the very, very beginning. And that sounded a little too cool. So we kind of just changed it to Bonerama. That sounds a little more like a junior high or something.
Okay, so Bonerama. So you got 3 trombones, sousaphone, and like rhythm section, right?
Yeah, guitar, drums, and when we started, we had probably 5 or 6 trombones. Like the very first gig, we might have had 6, and then at the same time, it was kind of like just a one-time thing we were doing. We didn't know we'd still be doing this decades later. It was just a chance to put something together for fun, get together with different trombone players from different backgrounds around town and play every once in a while. But like the first night, first of all, almost every trombone player in New Orleans, it seemed to be like showed up to see what this thing was about and why they weren't, included. That's hard. That was the hardest thing because there's so many great players.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably a nice pool to pick from down there.
It's seriously cool. And by the end of the night, we had everybody on stage at once, so that was fun. But there was something about the crowd reaction that we didn't expect. Like playing with multiple trombones, people don't, I guess, hear that too much like that. They're used to hearing traditional horn sections with trumpets and saxophones and whatever. But it's kind of a unique, cool sound to me, putting multiple trombones together. And you got such a wide range that the instrument covers. You can do so much arranging wise. If you got a bass trombone going up through the tenors, and if you got guys that can play upstairs on the tenors, you can really spread out some cool sonic sounding stuff, with the trombone as an instrument when you put a bunch of us together. And so the crowd was kind of picking up on that. And in fact, the first, we did Tipitina's French Quarter was our first night in June of 1998. And then we started playing around town. We did a few other Tips French Quarters. We started playing at the Old Point Bar. Dale Triguero was running the show there, and he would bring us in because he liked what we were doing. We ended up making our first record there. And then we got called to do Jazz Fest relatively quickly, from what I remember. I can't remember what year our first Jazz Fest was, but to do Jazz Fest in New Orleans it's just the biggest honor. And they put us on a great stage, on the Sprint stage or Gentilly stage. And when we started Whipping Post, there was nobody in front of us really, because on the cubes, on the schedule, when you see Jazz Fest, there's some brand new band called Bonerama. And so like this not on anybody's radar. And when we started Whipping Post with the trombones, I just remember people like came out from the woodwork, from all these tents and different places and just rushed the stage. It was really overwhelming to see the response. And we had a good first Jazz Fest there, and we've been playing pretty much every year since. We'll be there this year.
I was just looking at your schedule on your website. Is that the first week of May?
Yeah, they have a locals
Okay.
Thursday. They do. They do 2 weekends of Jazz Fest, if you're not familiar, in New Orleans at the fairgrounds, and it's crazy, crazy good bands, like crazy headliners, but yet awesomely local, good local stuff too, and regional music around Louisiana. And they have one day in the middle of those 2 weekends. It's that Thursday in the middle. They call it Locals Thursday. I think they might even have a different ticket price for that day, but they try to get more local people to come out. Anyway, that's the day we're on this year, and we're surprisingly late in the day too, like 4 o'clock or 4:30 or something like that, on that same stage, that Gentilly stage, which is my favorite stage out there. But they're all great. So yeah, we'll be out there, and we're doing French Quarter Fest. That's coming up next weekend. I'm not sure when this is going to be on, but April 14th, I believe, is our date there. Next Friday, whatever that is. Yeah.
Do you guys get out and tour much? I'm always looking at your website, hoping you might be up this way. I know sometimes it seems like you guys get up like to the Northeast a fair amount.
Yeah, we do the Northeast more than other parts. And we used to go through South Carolina here and there. It gets a little bit harder nowadays because most bands, at least on our level, we're not a super big band or a super big draw out of town all the time. But people know about us will come out. What's been hard is to kind of connect the dots to go all the way up the East Coast like we used to, all the way back. So we have to be more strategic about it because everything costs more: expenses, hotel rooms, rental cars, or whatever, gas, and we're not getting any younger either. So like we try to just be as smart as we can about how we go out, but there's definitely parts of the country I want to go back to more that we haven't been able to. And sometimes it's that even the Southeast, as close as it is to New Orleans, we end up usually just flying up to the Northeast and doing some of those cities up there because those cities are so much closer together. We'll do Florida sometimes. We're overdue to go there. Colorado, we'll go. But it's been a while since we've been to California, for example. It's been a while. And really the Southeast has been a little.
Yeah. I caught you in Asheville. That's the first time I ever really heard of the band at the old Belshire Festival. I don't remember exactly which year that was, but I think it was fairly soon after you guys started out.
It was pretty early, maybe 03 or something like that. Maybe, I'm just guessing. But
and I know at one time you guys played in Greenville, and I wanted to go see it, but didn't even start till like 10 o'clock on a Thursday night, and I was like, oh man, that's too late.
Yeah,
because I'm getting old too.
Yeah, that's the hard for us, because if we go out, we can't just sit in a hotel room for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. When we can't just wait for the weekend out there. We kind of have to play every night. And not only are we getting older, but our crowd's getting older, and that's just I'm that same way at home. If I don't have to go anywhere on a weeknight, I'm gonna try to get to bed earlier. just I'm not gonna go out, so.
So Mark, why don't you tell us a little about some of the other guys in the Bonerama band?
Right on. So it's myself on trombone and vocals, and Greg Hicks on trombone and some vocals. The newest guy in the band is Chris Butcher. He replaced Craig Klein, who left last year. And Chris is a great trombone player. He's actually from Canada, but we don't give him too much of a hard time about that because he plays like he's from New Orleans. He really does. He's great dude. Matt Perrine, sousaphone legend on the sousaphone back there.
I love microphone just kind of thrown up into the bell like that, like they do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and like if you think you know what a sousaphone can do, you come see Matt Perrine and he'll change your mind. He's ferocious. He's just ridiculous, and he's been there since day one of the original guys. Bert Cotton on guitar. He's been there since just about day one. Bert, I got in the band. I called him one night because we had a keyboard player at the time, Larry Seibert. Larry calls me before the gig. This is like a year into the band. It's like, Mark, I broke my leg. I can't make the gig. I was like, oh, I'll find somebody. And I couldn't find a keyboard player. So I was like, I'll call Bert on guitar. I was like, Bert, Mark with Bonerama, you want to come just fill in? And so he came that night, filled in. He's never left. Man. He fits right in. It's been great. Let's see, Eric Bolivar on drums. Eric has probably toured more with us than any other drummer we've ever had. We've had maybe more drummers than Spinal Tap in Bonerama over the years. So Eric's with us right now whenever we can have him. But and that's it. Did I cover everybody? My son Michael Mullins when he can make it. I think that's it. Yeah, that's the current lineup.
Okay. You guys go with three tenors and the sousaphone. Do you ever use a bass trombone? Or
We these days it's been basically three trombones and sousaphone and guitar and drums, and it's been like that for about since probably 15 years we've had the three. But lately, my son Michael Mullins, he's 22 years old. He sings his tail off, and he also plays. Well, he plays great tenor trombone, but he also plays bass trombone.
oh, cool.
From time to time, when we can get it to work with his schedule, and he's in school and he's got his own band, Zeta, which are terrific rock band, by the way. It's not just dad talking, but they're a really solid group of young guys playing some great original rock music, Zita. But when we can get him, we try to get him to come out, and he's going to be on most of these festival dates with us. So we'll have four trombones on some of that stuff, but we don't always have him around because he's kind of busy. And that's good. I want him to do his own thing, but it's pretty surreal having your kid up there with you, playing right next to you, and just being one of the guys. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, what kind of horn do you play?
This is the diaper guy. I used to change diapers with this kid. He's all like professional and stuff. What kind of horn does he play?
Or what do you play?
Oh, what do I play? I play a King 2B.
Okay.
Thanks to Joe Barati, the bass trombone player in Harry's band, kind of pulled me away from the Yamaha that I was playing and said, check out the King world a little bit. And I fell in love with the King 2B. I still play a Yamaha every once in a while. I mean, they're fun to play, but just for me and the kind of stuff that I do and what I like, I found the King 2B to be a perfect fit. I have a 1953 HN White Liberty that's hanging on. It's seen some abuse, but I've had it overhauled a couple of times by Sweeney, Scott Sweeney up in North Carolina. He's in Raleigh, not too far from you, I guess, but yeah, that's my horn. That's the horn I love.
If you're going to be playing that long and that high, the 2B is a good thing to have.
Oh yeah, it's a sports car. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I know you do a lot like with effects and electronics with the trombone, which most people don't do. Can you explain a little bit about how you got started in that and how all that works?
Yeah, I love I can't play guitar, but I love music that has a lot of guitar in it, and I'm influenced by a lot of guitar players. So we were working on a Mulebone track, and there was a trombone solo in one of the songs that wasn't quite fitting in the mix like we wanted it to. And John Gross, my partner John Gross, said, let's try running it through a Sans amp. It's like going through an amplifier, essentially. And we did that in the studio after the solo was cut, and it suddenly gave it this sonic space of a guitar in the mix. And it was just what I wanted. I was like, oh my God, this is great. Because it's not a volume thing necessarily. You could turn the clean trombone fader up in the mix, but it's just going to sound louder. It's not going to occupy a different space in the mix, if you will. There's something about, I don't know if it's compression, but there's something about when it goes through an amp, it just has a different set of feet. It's a different posture with that sound. And so I started messing with real guitar amps and pedals and figure out what worked, what doesn't work. How do you get a live mic to not feedback constantly through a guitar amp? And I just played with it for a while and figured out what could work for what I wanted to do. And essentially my sound is like a wah-wah based sound, a Vox wah-wah pedal with a harmonizer, but the harmonizer, I use like 2% of what it can do. I use, if it's not just a straight tone, I'll do maybe an octave. And then on some of these harmonizers, there's like an open fifth tuning kind of thing. It sounds like a slide guitar tuning, if you will, a blues guitar. I use that setting a lot, and that's great. That's great. and some distortion. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that. And I don't do it all the time. I just try to do it on certain solos here and there. It can so easily be overused. And so I try to just bring it to the table when it can maybe help the song or function as a solo instrument. Some of the Zeppelin stuff that we did, we made a whole album of Zeppelin.
Yeah, can you talk about that? I know I saw some of your Facebook and various posts about that process, and like that's a really cool. I've not purchased it. I apologize. I've not yet purchased that CD, but tell us about.
Good, but I use that sound a lot. I use the guitar amp thing with the trombone on that record quite a bit, but it's really on all of our albums. You can go back to the first album when we did Frankenstein. I got a solo in there, but it's a lot of stuff to lug around. But I don't mind doing that at all. But no, the Zeppelin thing was fun. I mean, this was like 4 years ago. We had already had a bunch of Zeppelin stuff in our song list that we would do, and so we're kind of like looking at each other saying, let's just do a whole album of Zeppelin and just for fun. And it's actually been our best-selling album, and it's definitely the most popular album we've had. But during the show, we'll mix it up though. We'll have some Zeppelin stuff on almost every show, but we'll definitely have a healthy dose of original music and funk music, and maybe even a step in New Orleans, a little bit of traditional jazz here and there. But the Zeppelin thing was definitely fun to do, and it came out nice. It was super fun. It's a fine line, like you don't want to be, they're like, well, we should do a Beatles album. It's like, well, you just want to. I just want to be real careful. I don't want to step over into that area too much, because we're already accused of being a little too much like a cover band sometimes from time to time. So we like to keep it balanced and keep bringing in fresh original ideas and mixing it up with that stuff. And it's actually works great in the set, because when people don't see when the levee breaks coming, they just heard like some original song that they were moving to, whatever, but all of a sudden you're throwing levee breaks at their face and they take a step back. It kind of works nice in the set to be able to mix that up with different sounds, different style songs. It's cool.
Yeah, and all these great bands from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, those guys are all getting kind of old now. So it's yeah. Oh, I mean, there's cover bands now, or tribute bands covering a lot of this music, and honestly, they sound as good or better than the original guys a lot of the times.
I know, right?
I've seen excellent Pink Floyd cover band, Brit Floyd.
Oh, really?
Those guys just kill it. Yeah, they tour. I've seen them twice in the last 3 or 4 years, and they do the whole laser show and the graphics and the the illustrations and everything. It's just a fantastic show. And then saw a Fleetwood Mac cover band a couple of weeks ago that was just, you couldn't tell it wasn't the record.
Wow.
So
then you got Led Zeppelin with the girls. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're a trip. They're all women Led Zeppelin cover band. Killer.
Okay. Let's see. I know you were involved. I saw through your Facebook that you involved in this Last Waltz tour recently.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a kick, man. It's a show. It's produced by Blackbird Presents. They're out of New York, and I started doing some things with them about 9 years ago. They did a Dr. John tribute at the Sanger Theater during Jazz Fest, and they had me come in and do horns. Bruce Springsteen was on it, and there's so many people on that. And then we've also done stuff like Led Zeppelin, not Led Zeppelin, Leonard Skinner night in Atlanta, where the band was out and we would back up different people, different other stars doing Skinner songs. Well, they decided to do one for the band, The Last Waltz, the music of The Last Waltz from the band's legendary concert. And same kind of thing. It's Don Was on bass and Warren Haynes on guitar, Jamie Johnson on guitar, John Medeski, Terrence Higgins. I'm leaving somebody out. Cyril Neville, Dave Malone. There's a whole bunch of people that have done this. We've done it just about every year, except for COVID, since 2017. So what is that? 5 years, 6 years, 5 years. And last year we went out in November, try to do it in November every year when possible. But that's a kick because those songs are so great. And to get to play those songs with this kind of collection of musicians, everyone kind of comes from a different background. You know, Warren with Government Mule and Don with his background, Jamie in the country world. And so they had me come in and try to, basically we're reproducing some of Alan Toussaint's original arrangements that he wrote for the band for the Last Waltz and back for the Live at the Academy of Music Rock of Ages show. And while I didn't have the original scores, I would just cop what I could from the album and then make it our own on top of that, maybe change a few things here and there. But I'm like the world's biggest Alan Toussaint fan. So it's such a treat to be able to do this and to play his arrangements with these amazing players. But it's a fabulous show if you ever get to see it.
So that's going to be okay. Yeah. So you're going to be touring that again sometime.
Well, we hope maybe this fall if the stars align. That's in the past. That's what they've tried to do. They've tried to do Novembers in the past. So fingers crossed. We'll see what happens this year. We'll have to keep our eyes out.
Okay. Yeah, I think Atlanta was as close as that came to me. And
sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a super fun show, and the horns role in that is pretty significant. The way Alan wrote for the horns for that stuff, it's very cool arrangements. And
what was the horn section for that? Well,
for the original, they had a bunch of horns. I don't even know how many, to be honest with you. I should know that, but I want to say at least 8. It was a big section. Euphoniums and tubas, sousaphone. Howard Johnson was involved. Jerry Hay, all great cast of characters, like the best of the best, And I never get tired of going back and watching that. The Last Waltz, the original thing, and then to try to find some outtake footage online and stuff like that. It's just, to me, it's just fascinating. What a historic concert it was, but yet. Just the catalog is stunning, because it still stands up great today. They're just great songs.
Oh, yeah.
Great songs.
You have some other bands you play with as well?
Every once in a while, whenever I can, like this past month, we had our 25th anniversary with Bonerama. So I used to play with George Porter Jr. and I was able to convince him to come by and be a guest, and so that was great. The Radiators, I used to kind of sub with them a little bit or just kind of guest with them a little bit. This is like 20 years ago, probably. And so for the other anniversary show, I got the front man, Dave Malone, guitarist from the Radiators, to come be a guest as well. So I don't get to play with the Rads too much, but I sure love playing with Dave whenever possible, and George. But otherwise, I stay pretty focused on Bonerama. And I have a smaller group I'll play with sometimes around New Orleans. Chris Atkins on guitar. He plays with George Porter Jr. Cass Faulkner on bass. Different set of drummers. It could be anybody. Sometimes Alvin Ford or Devin Trusclair. And Mike Lemler on keys. And Dumpster Funk, I used to play with them a bit here and there a while ago, but just been kind of tied up with Bonerama, and they've got a different section going on now. But try to stay focused on the band, because that usually takes up most of my time. I do a lot of the business stuff for the band too. That's kind of keeps.
Yeah, it looks like you guys have quite a few dates in New Orleans in the next month or two.
Yeah, this is season, like it's festival time. and we'll play a lot more now this time of year than we do like at Mardi Gras. Everyone thinks, oh, y'all must be busy at Mardi Gras. It used to be like that, but I don't know. People, or maybe it's just our crowd, they're just more into the parades. Nowadays, they don't go to the clubs as much, but for the festivals, it's on. I mean, French Quarter Fest next Friday, and then 2 weeks behind that, Jazz Fest starts and rolls for 2 weeks. And then we got another festival, Bayou Boogaloo Festival. There's 2 Bayou Boogaloo festivals that I know about. There's one in New Orleans and one in Norfolk, Virginia. And they're 1 day apart, and we're going to play both of them, as crazy as that is. We're doing the Bayou Boogaloo here in New Orleans on the 19th, May 19th. Great festival. Smaller than French Quarter Fest, smaller than Jazz Fest, but like more of a neighborhood festival, if you will, but it's grown into a pretty sizable neighborhood festival for the scope of that. But people love that festival down here. It's great. And then the next day we're going to get up and be on an airplane at 5:30 in the morning and go up to Norfolk and go right to the stage and rock it out there for the Bayou Boogaloo in Norfolk on the 20th. Yeah, so that'll be a busy couple of days for sure.
You got any new projects or anything you want to tell us about before we wrap it up?
No, well, we're gonna hopefully have some new material or maybe a compilation kind of thing that we're going to be releasing sometime this year for our 25th anniversary. That is yet to be seen. We'll see what happens with that, but we're just going to try to get out and about as much as we can this year. So keep an eye out for us. Bonerama Music. No, that's the old one. See, BoneramaBrass.com, Bonerama Brass. But we're easy to find on Facebook and social media. And we'd love to stay in touch with people that are interested in the band, and come check us out. We'll be trying to get out as much as possible. It's a 25th year here. Yeah,
that's great. You've been able to maintain it for that long. So, Mark, I really, really do appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and it was very generous of you to take time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.